What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Free China
What's up?
Pod. We didn't wait 2 weeks to do this one, man. Or, no, what? 3 weeks. As we did last time.
week.
Yeah. Getting our schedules worked out. Two busy boys working schedules out.
Two busy working women. Two busy ladies on the streets.
We make 70 cents for every dollar a man makes.
No comment.
What's up, man?
What's up?
You got all the hot news today, I hope, because I don't think I came with almost anything.
Well, first, I want to continue the conversation we were having before, where Jordan said that all academics are pompous and they look down on people without degrees.
They're ivory tower fuckwads, might we say. So, what are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts recently, I've been listening to a lot of Papa Rogan talking to a lot of very, let's say, people with very disorganized thoughts. And in particular, I forget the man's name. This is an example of my disorganized thinking.
Pete Sassafras.
The dude who was talking about homeless people with a very Jewish sounding name, his like 3-hour rant was full of internal contradictions where and it's late at night and I've been presenting all day, so I can't remember any of the exact details, but point being, like, every time he would say something, he would contradict his own point 10 minutes later. Every time he would say something that's like a critical principle of his, he would contradict it 10 minutes later. It's just this example of completely disorganized thinking. And what I was thinking lately is, when he has a scientist on, this doesn't happen, because typically, and that's not always true, because I think
what about Brett Weinstein?
Yeah, Brett Weinstein is the epitome, the perfect example of a scientist with completely disorganized thought, which is why he's basically been driven out of science, and he's no longer a scientist. He's a disgraced podcaster. I mean, we're just being real. He lost his job at a university. He was driven out because he didn't act like a scientist. He acted like an attention-seeking 16-year-old. And he decided that making money off of teaching and getting as much attention for him and his wife as possible was more important than science, apparently. I mean, I don't know. Yeah. I know what happened at the university, and I know the context of all that.
He's been chasing that high since that time.
Yeah,
well.
Get another job at another school. Go abroad. There's, academia exists in more than one place, don't you, Brett Weinstein? But no, he just decided to start a podcast and exit science. So stop pretending you're a scientist. You're not a scientist anymore. You're not doing science.
It's because
let's be honest,
all college campuses are full of cancel culture, Ari. He can't go back. He can't do research.
PhD student, as somebody who's done graduate school outside of the U.S. for many years, in Canada and then in Taiwan, this cancel culture, I don't know about the state in the U.S. right now, but it's non-existent abroad. It's literally non-existent. So just quit your fucking whining, honestly.
I don't think it's that big of a. It's not as big of a deal as they make it out to be in the U.S. I think. I mean, it exists, and in some places, I think it's. I'm not big on actual cancel culture, but sometimes what they describe as cancel culture is not really cancel culture. It's calling people out for views that some people think are abhorrent.
Yeah, but what academia is all about, is calling people.
Exactly.
Is basically discussing ideas and trying to figure out who's right.
Right. I think, when it gets to cancellation, there are some times when, depends what you mean by cancellation, but sometimes some things that you say should get you fired. Now, I don't. In Weinstein's case, I forget.
Well, he didn't get fired. He resigned.
But anyway.
I don't think what he did in that university sounded too terrible, and I don't agree with the fact he was pushed out for that reason from that university.
Was he pushed out though? Because he resigned.
I think there was a lot of pressure on him, and I really don't know all of the circumstances.
I don't either.
But from what I did glean from it, it looked like the administration was putting a lot of pressure on him. They that university is a very weird, very obscure liberal arts college where they don't have typical classes. They seem to have cohorts of students that get, I don't know, mentored by a professor and stick with a single professor for several years. I don't really understand that process, but it would be, in a circumstance like that, I could imagine that it would be easier to kind of penalize a professor by taking away their students and funding or something like that in some weird way that wouldn't be possible at a traditional university.
Perchance.
honestly, if that's his worry though, then he shouldn't be teaching at some weird, freaky liberal arts college, like in the Northwest Pacific.
Yeah.
Like get another job, man. That's what being an adult is, Brett Weinstein.
Get a job.
Get a job, sir!
That makes me think of Big Lebowski.
So what do you think? What do you think of what I said? Do you think that there's like this kind of? I think that the benefit of science is that it means that you have to organize your thinking.
Yeah.
Because it has to be undergo scrutiny by others.
Yeah, if done correctly. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's now in the age and space in which we live. I mean, even before, I guess there was a lot of like fake data, but I mean, it still happens today. Like, I don't want to bring it up because the topic is just rife with just everyone screaming and pulling their hair out and dressing in sackcloth and ashes because they get so upset about it. But like,
Let me get your pornographic references.
The ivermectin studies, like there was numerous ones that were just fake. So I don't.
Yeah, but were those out of the U.S.? Like,
No, they weren't. The one I'm thinking of wasn't. It was out of somewhere in South America. But still, I mean, we talked about what was the study? You've mentioned it a few times. The one that Rogan always references that isn't peer reviewed.
I don't know if it has. At this point, it may have been peer reviewed. This was several weeks ago when we were talking about.
But that's my point. Is like you can come up with a study. I mean, we can do a study that's not peer reviewed, right? And people can cherry pick that. So
yeah,
overall, yes, I would agree with you. But I still think that there are grifters in every field, right? So you're gonna. But overall, yes, I agree with you. Is what I'm trying to say.
I just want to give another example to that point. Like my father was telling me yesterday about some study. He's like, oh, there's a new study out of Israel, and it showed that younger people basically had a stronger protective effect from the Pfizer vaccine than older people.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, so you take that study and you believe that to be a fact based on that study? He's like, yeah, and it had like 180,000 people. And basically what I pointed out to him is, just because there are a lot of people and just because it's a scientific study doesn't mean that the way it's organized and conducted make it valid science. So the principal problem with that study, as with all of these studies that come out of Israel, is they're not double-blind, controlled, randomized studies. This is an observational study. So I said, okay, think about this. There's 90,000 people in each group. So there's 90,000 who got the vaccine, 90,000 that didn't. What if the 90,000 who didn't get the vaccine got it because they lived in the countryside? Right. And it was more difficult to visit the doctor. And maybe that was some confounding factor that affected their susceptibility to COVID. What if those 90,000 had parents who worked all the time and lived in poverty or something like that, and that's why they didn't get the vaccines? And that could also affect their ability, their immune system, and their
the food that they eat, the fact that maybe their parents are in contact with a lot of other people, or they themselves are in contact with a lot of people, so they're more likely to get it.
Observational studies, and you don't think about this because they just spread it in the news. They're just like, oh, this study with 180,000 people says this. It's like, but this is not proving anything. It's just another observational study which cannot make any conclusions. It's the furthest you can generalize that study is that out of those 180,000 people who live in Israel, it was true for them. It is not necessarily true for anyone else because it's not a randomized population.
Anecdote, essentially. Well,
exactly.
It's like you were saying. It's also indicative of kind of the broader, like, overarching culture of like what happens now. And I don't know that it's different from what happened before but with the proliferation of media, you have like basically people just read headlines now, so they can put out this headline of this study that's like, oh, like if you get whatever vaccine, or you don't get it, or you take whatever, like you take ivermectin or whatever, like then like you have better or worse results, like, and people just read the headline. And we've talked recently a lot about how misleading headlines are, and it's not even reporters, honestly. A lot of the times it's the like editors and stuff that write these headlines. So
speaking of Joe, I remember of headlines. I remember a long time ago, when he used to have guests, he would be like, yeah, I read your book. I haven't heard him say that in like years. I don't think he reads the books anymore. I think he just reads like the abstract basically for like what their project was.
Wikipedia. Yeah.
So I think he's doing the same thing, just reading headlines, which is why the conversations that he has with these people are getting really bad quality lately.
Well, he needs to spend a lot of time in the sensory deprivation tank, Ari, and then the sauna, and then the cold tank, the ice bath.
I spend 10 hours a day in the sauna, folks. I don't know why I'm doing like a bad Alex Jones voice.
I still remember when he posted the like 30-minute video of him just sitting in the ice bath.
I didn't see it.
It was weird, man. He just posted it.
Why did you watch that?
I didn't obviously didn't watch it. People were making memes out people were making memes out of it because he's just sitting there like shivering and be like, "Oh, oh." It's like, what? Why did you stream this, dude? That's so weird. Like,
there are a lot of people who are creepily obsessed with that, man. He's an interesting character. He's like an American everyman, basically. But he is Americans. I think a lot of Americans, especially like wannabe macho men, have an unhealthy obsession with that man, bordering on the homoerotic. No.
That's fine if that's your kink, but
yeah, I'm not saying anything good or bad.
But,
I'm just
but
saying
you
he's
just like
a sex figure.
Well,
for the gay community in America.
I think that's definitely not true. I think it's for maybe for closeted men,
maybe,
but and like you said, macho men, but
closeted bears.
Definitely not. maybe so, but definitely not for like people who are like out and out flying pride flags. A lot of those people really dislike him.
Why?
Well, because I think a lot of it is because of, how do I want to word this? Because he's not a transphobe, but his
thanks for not lying like CNN does.
CNN lied about me. No, because like he uses pronouns, but he has some, might we say, controversial takes on transgender people, and it mostly applies to sports. That's essentially where the only place that he cares about. Like,
I wouldn't say those are controversial. I would say that there's no consensus in like.
Well, that's why it's controversial.
So, but any view then would be controversial. Just making any statement whatsoever on trans people in sports would be controversial because there's no consensus at all.
Yeah.
So regardless of what you said,
that's probably true. But he has
taken stances.
Yes, and because he has like the biggest podcast in the world, and he's not afraid to like say it. Like a lot of people, he's taken a. I wouldn't even say the super strong stance.
I get what you're
most
saying,
parts,
but there's also some contradiction between gay rights and trans rights in certain circumstances.
Maybe. Why? How so? What's your point?
What's my point? You're saying that gay people wouldn't like him, and I'm saying, but even if he made some things that he made some statements about trans people being able to participate in gendered sports that trans people might not like, I don't see why that would affect whether gay or straight people like him.
Well,
because I feel like those are separate
obviously,
things.
you can't talk about any of these as like a monolith, but I would say that like a lot of people that are in LGBTQIA, like that sort of group, this like non-heteronormative group, a lot of them band together because they're minority groups, just like a lot of minority groups band together in general. So that's where it would be. But of course, like it's the same thing with like, for instance, women tend to probably, at least I haven't seen data on this for a while, so this is probably outdated. But women, at least before, tended to be more sympathetic to like LGBTQ plus, the LGBT. I almost said agenda, the agenda of the LGBT. But like this kind of like
their interests.
Well, I mean, like to like support them, their ideology, whatever you want to say. Like,
when you say their ideology, I think they were in support of gay marriage, but that's basically been accomplished around the world.
Right. But what I'm saying is that like, because they have like this, they're also in like, they also have like somewhat of a lack of power, like in their relationship to like men, at least especially going back.
You mean women?
Yes. Obviously, these things are changing, but my point is that these groups tend to band together, at least in some rate. But you still have like trans exclusionary feminists and things like that. So like it's, again, my point and all that was just that there's no way to speak of it like a monolith. So I don't, just like we kind of push back on like the right left divide, I don't know that it's helpful to like talk about like the LGBTQIA or whatever group as like
too many letters
group.
There.
Yeah.
Let's just refer to all these small minority groups by, I don't know what I'm trying to say, man.
Too late. It's too late, bud.
I don't think I said anything.
No. I mean, it's
regrettable.
Too late in the day.
Oh.
No, it's too late. You already.
It's too late. You can't take.
You can't take it back.
You can't take your third of a sentence back.
You're done. Cancel Ari, everyone. Hashtag cancel Ari.
Never. You'll never shut me down.
Well, the thing is, we're independent, so you can't really cancel us.
We're independent media, folks. I would
beautiful
recommend.
part of it.
I've mentioned this to you before, and the fact that you were talking about all these different groups, it reminded me of Afghanistan in that Afghanistan book.
Oh,
I
yeah.
strongly recommend it. I haven't finished it. I'm on like chapter 5. What's his name? See, now I forget the name.
Garth Ennis.
Mulcazian, Mulcazian on Afghanistan. It's really interesting. You can learn a lot from that. I've learned a lot, and I'm only on chapter 5. It's like a 700-page ebook.
Let me borrow it. Oh, just in case anyone's trying to listen to it, the podcast you were talking about, I looked it up. It's Michael Schellenberg.
Yeah, told you it's Jewish sounding.
Oh, sorry, Schellenberger.
Even worse.
Even longer. I'm not gonna make any comments about that.
I feel like American Jewish Jewish last names
Awesome.
are like corruptions of like 19th century German. They all sound very strange. If you go, I feel like Israeli Jewish names all sound, because I think it's more diverse because you have people from the Middle Eastern world.
Well, yeah, from all over.
Well, in particular, like after the formation of the Israeli state, most Jews were basically expelled from the Arab countries nearby. So you have a very heavy, what we say, Mizrahim, like Eastern population, I guess. Eastern there being like from the Middle East, but even from like Sephardic, like from North Africa and Spain and all that stuff. So you get a lot more diversity of names instead of every single person being like Ashkenazi, like these.
Yeah.
Greenberg, Goldfarb, those kinds of things.
Weinstein. Also, so, I mean, doesn't have as much to do with it, but a lot of names were kind of bastardized at Ellis Island. I know.
Oh yeah.
So that's another thing, and also a lot of people kind of, if you're gonna keep like that Jewish sounding of a name, probably not. But like I know there's a number of Jews that changed their names because of anti-Semitism in the U.S. So
yeah, for sure.
Or people trying to get acting jobs.
I was gonna say something that could out my last name, so I'm just not gonna finish that statement. All right, what else is in the news?
It's Sandler, we know.
If my last name was Sandler, I would change it.
It's just change it to like Finkelstein or something.
Yeah.
No offense to any Finkelstein.
Schweingartner.
That's kind of a sick name. It's the names sound even cooler when they're
Schweinpudler.
said in like a German accent, which is kind of fucked up. But anyway, I don't know. You tell me, man. I told you that you had to come with the news. I don't have.
Biden came out of the closet recently. He said that the United States apparently, I don't know if he understands what exactly the Taiwan Relations Act has in it, but it
this is the second time in like what 2 or 3 weeks where he's made some gaffe about Taiwan.
You know what's really weird is he was in Congress when that bill passed in 1979. So he probably, I don't know if he voted for it. I wonder if he did, man.
Back in my day, Jack, you could have a root beer float with a dame down at the soda parlor, and you could talk about Taiwan. You didn't have to beat around the bush with these GG Bings.
For anyone who doesn't know exactly, he made it basically clear that the United States would defend Taiwan in the event of a conflict. Again, he reiterated it.
Yeah,
and it hasn't been walked back yet, as far as I know.
I saw that someone kind of walked it back already.
No. He got out of the basement again.
He broke out of his restraints, and it's okay, everyone. Don't panic. It will be okay.
Yeah, he was a senator from 1973 to 2009. I can't imagine him not voting on that bill, because it passed in 79.
I'm sure he voted. I don't know which way he voted. I assume he would probably have voted for.
Let me see the votes. I'm really curious now. Roll call votes. Let's see.
Roll call.
There were 23 co-sponsors. It was mostly Democrats, by the way.
Probably a bunch of Dixiecrats.
It's passed in the Senate. Let's see who the what if he co-sponsored it back in the day, man?
I doubt it.
That would be cool, though. Gregory Meeks. I've heard his name. Joaquin Castro. Chrissy Houlihan. Ted Lieu. Ilhan Omar. Well, no, this is wrong.
I was just 3 years old when I co-sponsored this bill.
This is definitely the wrong bill. Fine, I'll find it later, folks. I apologize. These people. There's a reason I've heard their names.
I was gonna say Ted Lieu is still in Congress.
Yeah, that's why I was surprised here. Elon Omar definitely did not vote for the Taiwan Relations Act in 1979. I clicked co-sponsor.
I don't even think she was born in 1979.
Here we go. I found it. Charles Diggs. Yeah, you can see even the names look older. No, he wasn't on that co-sponsor list. Don Bonker.
Bonker.
Interesting. It was like pretty bipartisan.
Back when we could make a real bipartisan bill. That's the problem with Joe Biden, is that his brain is still stuck in like the 1980s. So he like he still thinks that like bipartisanship is still, when we had like these non like ideologically consistent parties that they could like actually like have some cross aisle stuff. But now it's just like expanded past like real ideology and just it's just party politics now. It's just like look at every bill that passes now. It's like it'll be like like all of the Democrats will vote for it, and then like 2 Republicans will in Congress, and then 0 in the Senate. It's just there's absolutely no
disgusting.
Which is why like talking about this like reaching across the aisle stuff is silly.
I do like that Joe Rogan, speaking of him again, always talks about getting rid of the 2-party system, but I don't like, as you always criticize, that it's always back to Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah,
Did you hear about
my joke?
My son Tulsi Gabbard and how great she is?
Do you hear that Weinstein tried to create a 3rd party and then Twitter shut him down?
Yeah, stop being friends with Jack Dorsey, you fuck.
Well, the fact that their 2 candidates were Tulsi Gabbard and then Eye Patch Boy, what's his name? Dan Crenshaw. That was like their 2 candidates. It's like no one's gonna vote for them. Like they're not even popular in their own parties. Like what are you thinking?
I don't know about Dan Crenshaw. I have no idea his popularity. Nobody cares about Tulsi Gabbard, honestly.
I don't think people care about Crenshaw either. He's too busy putting out Marvel videos.
Gross.
Did you see the campaign ad he put out that was like a Marvel thing?
No.
It was very cringe. It was very sad. It was very Pandaberry.
I should learn a little bit more about him before I spit. I don't know much about Tulsi Gabbard either, but I know the fact that they talk about them all the time as if they're just the next like saviors of the world is very grinding and irritating.
They're not popular either. I mean, Crenshaw is probably slightly more popular in the Republican Party, but he's already fallen off. He was popular for like a little bit, but he's not rabid enough for like the chud base of the Republicans. And Tulsi Gabbard she's not lib enough for the libs, and she's not left enough for leftists, because she's like talking about how she's like gonna be like just like a lot of these like Klobuchar and all these people like talking about
Klobuchar
rubbing up against.
I forgot about her already.
Yeah, old cloud boot jar. But they rub up against these left ideas, and then when you start to push, just like Kamala, like she's like, yeah, I would probably be in favor of like a Medicare for all style system, and then when you push her on it, be like, okay, so what are your ideas about it? And she's like, oh, well, like 99% of it would be privatized, and then like the other 5% would be run by Latinos in the inner cities of Los Angeles, and they would have to graduate with a 2-year associate's degree. And it's just like, okay, so you're an idiot, and you're this is fake. Like it's virtue signaling.
I don't know, man.
It's just dumb. Like pick someone who's popular, or come up with a new candidate. Like why don't you go find some people who are not connected to the system, since you claim to hate the system so much. Like that would be fine. Look how many resources these people have, and they never use them for any of the things they say they want.
American politics is very frustrating to watch from abroad right now.
It is, but think about if Rogan and Weinstein got together, and all their other big money people that claim to hate the system so much, and push with a bunch of their money to create rallies all over the United States for ranked choice voting. Like,
I don't even think Joe Rogan remembers what that means.
He probably doesn't, but then it's like,
they're not really interested in it, man. They're not like it's just like
no, they benefit from the current system. They like to rail against it because it gets them views, but they don't really care about changing it because they're not that adversely affected by it like most of the working class people are.
Yeah, that's just. I mean, he and all of his guests are all elites and millionaires, so it's really interesting when they talk down to the rest of us.
Yeah, Joe, so if you want to have some real working class boys on, why don't you have the FreeChinaPost on there? Or are you too much of a pussy?
I don't think he deserves a platform on our show. So.
No, we won't platform Joe Rogan.
It's a joke. We would take the invitation. We'd consider it at the very least.
Yeah, we'd have to have a long, drag-out discussion about it, but we could.
I keep thinking about what I wanted to say, and I keep forgetting what it was. I'm just so tired, and my brain is so empty right now. Oh, Facebook. There's been a lot of weird stuff with Facebook. Did you hear they're trying to basically do what like Google did with Alphabet, where they create this kind of parent corporation, and Facebook just becomes one of their tools, and they're trying to, according to Mark Zuckerberg's avatar, they're trying to move into the Metaverse and become a Metaverse company. Whatever the fuck that means.
We are a Metaverse company.
That's literally, I'm not exaggerating, that's literally what he said. And they're trying to basically remove, so it's not going to be called Facebook Corporation anymore.
I heard that they were talking about changing the name,
Yeah, to like Metaverse Incorporated. I'm not joking.
Yeah, no, I know, I saw it.
They're trying to move into the AR space. Again, like we get that Mark Zuckerberg wants to become a real person, and the only way that he can do that is by merging the real world with the metaverse. But
please jack into my metaverse with me, otherwise I cannot communicate efficiently.
This is why
Sweet baby rays.
This is why Elon Musk is so dangerous, because he's gonna bring monsters like this into the real world. If we all start plugging into this like AR metaverse, then suddenly avatars like Mark Zuckerberg, if they become real, if they cross the boundary from imagination into reality, this is a dangerous future ahead of us. I'm not joking.
It's not a joke. That's how nightmares become real. I just hope that all these things get broken up. Like,
especially Twitter. Twitter first.
I mean, the issue with Twitter is that
Jack Dorsey's a terrorist.
Well, I mean, yes, he's an American terrorist. There's actually an article, I believe, about that in The Intercept.
Is there really?
I think so.
I mean, you can tell by his beard.
Hey, I'm growing my beard out too. I appreciate it.
Not like that.
Talk about my kinfolk like that.
Any person who looks like that is or has been a terrorist, like in the last 5 years. It either is currently a member of ISIS or literally was just released from Guantanamo Bay.
I take umbrage with that, and I also take umbrage with the fact that he has never been in Guantanamo and thus could never be released from there.
That's I agree with that. Let's get him in there quickly. Did you hear he like tweeted about he was trying to predict when the Bitcoin hash when basically Bitcoin price would peak and which would be the last hash number.
Sounds like he's trying to get on an Elon Musk tip.
He fucking owns Twitter. What a literally he's got half the power in the social media metaverse here.
Yeah.
And he's like, I mean, the best that he can do is tweet out a block number and like the Bitcoin blockchain. What a sad fucking terrorist.
Well, he's constantly on his little like retreats.
I'm gonna go snort peyote in the woodshed with my.
Why have like his corporate overlords not removed him and just sent him to Guantanamo?
Because he owns it, man. I mean,
does he own it? I thought it was. Is it not publicly traded?
I don't know, but I mean, he's
privately managed.
Who's gonna kick him out? I mean,
anybody who wants Twitter to actually start making money.
I don't know that Twitter doesn't make money, does it not?
I have no idea. Does Twitter have ads? I don't use Twitter.
It has a lot of sponsored content. That's why I used to get a ton of sponsored content from Huawei and CGTN and stuff.
When Twitter allowed Donald Trump to basically declare preemptive nuclear war against North Korea on Twitter and then banned him off the platform literally like 9 days before his term was over, that's when I knew that Jack Dorsey was purely interested in making money and trying to destroy humanity.
All you need to know, you didn't have to know anything about that. You just have to know that he's a capitalist. Anyone that's like these rich people that call themselves capitalists, like that's.
Does he call himself a capitalist?
What do you think he calls himself, a communist?
I don't know what he calls himself. I've never heard him talk.
I mean, he's clearly.
I've just seen pictures of his terrorist beard.
He's clearly balls deep in the capitalist system.
I mean, he might be a member of the Taliban for all we know.
Doesn't make him any less of a capitalist or a terrorist, for that matter.
Do you hate all people who make businesses, Jordan? We made a business this year.
I didn't say that.
We made 2 businesses.
I didn't say that. Who said that? Why are you putting words in my mouth, Ari?
Because technically what we did was capitalist. Was it wrong?
We're working within the system that we have, but these people have a lot more power to make the system a lot better. We also don't have anyone. We don't exploit anyone. I hold a lot.
We would.
I wouldn't. I would not
say that now.
I would not.
I'm not sure, man. If the circumstances came down to it, I don't think either of us. I think both of us are good people, and we wouldn't deliberately exploit people. But would we put people in situations where they might be exploited if we like ran a large corporation? I think it's almost inevitable. This is just kind of like the structure.
No, you just set it up democratically.
Well, then you don't have any power. And
we also don't work in a place where like we're using everything that's created is created by us.
Yeah. I mean, it's a small company. They're a small.
Well,
company.
even if it was grown, what would it be? It would be maybe hiring people to write for FreeChinaPost.com, or it would be maybe having paying someone to edit it.
Let's say one of our other business ventures this year that would have required staff, those kinds of positions.
I would still fairly compensate them for their labor,
Yeah.
and I would also let them negotiate for their own wages. And if they wanted to unionize, I would be fine with that. Like, they can do all those things. I'm not opposed to any of that.
What if what their demands would mean that the company can no longer make a profit?
Well, obviously, if it's not profitable, then it's not feasible. I mean, I might agree with them and want them to succeed in that, but it's unworkable in that case then. So it would depend on what it was.
What if you had an idea for the future for the company, like you wanted to save some money in the company to invest in some expansion, and they're like, no, we just want money now.
Then I would probably try to work with them to figure out a way that it could work, where I could give them something maybe other than money, like some benefits or time off or whatever it is. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, I would at least have it democratically decided and have them come to the table.
When you say democratically decided, it doesn't sound like a democracy if you are still the boss. That's not a democracy. That's a consultative authoritarian state.
Well, the other thing is that, so if they were going to reimburse all the money that we put in to create it, then I think they would get a voting share.
Would you be willing to do that if you lost all the power in the company that you created with your ideas and your hard work?
Depends on which business venture. If it was FCP, no, I'm not going to let someone else take it over. But again, we create all the content.
We created it.
Well, I mean, that's what it is. It's not like we're exploiting someone else's labor to put out our content.
I'm talking about the other ones where you could think of a kind of
I get
very easy hierarchical.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Kind of tease it out.
I don't think that necessarily that's the worst thing in the world, but I think it's quickly once you start moving up in the scale of it, it quickly gets exploitative. You look at any of the places we've worked in Taiwan, hugely exploitative.
Would your solution then be economic democracy in all firms? And if so, why would anyone have the incentive to start a business if as soon as they create it, they basically kind of lose power and lose the power to control what they created?
You have groups of people that work into it. I mean, you could have groups of people that create these companies as opposed to one sole progenitor of these things.
If it's democratic, though, then every single person will probably have the same vote and share, right? Which means that you could have 2 or 3 people. Let's say it was a larger company, you really wanted to create I don't know, say a fishing vessel or something,
a widget factory.
And then it would be so easy to basically hire a few people to expand it, and then you just totally lose control. Possibly,
but I don't think so. It's not if it's a large corporation, 3 votes aren't going to swing the tide.
Let's say a fishing boat. So you your first mate, then you have 2 other people, and then you need to hire 6 crew, and you make it an economic democracy where everyone has a free share. Mm-hmm. Those 6 crew could overrule you and basically be you're no longer the captain, you're no longer part of this venture, and then what? You guys just start a new ship somewhere else? It's
well, they could, but I mean, again, if you we're also talking about operating under this the capitalist system that we have. So you own the ship, so you can say okay, so this company is no longer going, but you're off the ship, and I'm going to start my own venture again. So it's basically I mean, you're still just firing them because it's your ship.
But then in that case, it's not a true democracy.
Under the current machinations that we live under, You don't have the real option.
So So what is your solution then? If it's not economic democracy within the existing capitalist system, what would it be?
Well, I mean, my ideal is like some sort of like worker-owned paradise state. Like, you know,
I mean, like
gay space
realistically,
communism is my ideal. But like,
I don't think anyone wants that.
everyone wants that if they really think about it. But like, what is it like currently? Like something that I think is attainable in the near future? Yeah,
Sure.
it's heavy union membership and some sort of democratization of the workplace. So yeah, I mean, of course, I'm not gonna like let someone come into something that I've spent.
I spent my life building this company.
Multiple years with my blood, sweat, and tears. I don't appreciate that you didn't appreciate my rhyme there. But, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to let someone come in here and just because they have more money, because, again, we live in, like, a system that, like, lets capital accumulate and come in and, like, buy us out. But that doesn't mean that, like, if someone is putting in, like, a lot of effort that's making a lot of money, I'm not going to give them their fair share.
With the problem with the democratic aspect of businesses like this is instead of it being about who has the most money, it's about who has the most popularity and charisma. And it becomes a different kind of trap where you're going to have one worker that comes in. He's like, this guy's running it like shit. I'm likable. I'm handsome. I'm tall. Everyone vote for me and I'm going to be their new CEO.
Yeah.
Basically.
You sound like the Chinese right now.
But that's dangerous too in some ways. Like,
yeah, but that's their argument against democracy in general.
I mean, there's no better way than democracy in terms of running, I would say, government, which is for everyone's benefit. But for companies, I feel like should be some mixed format. I agree with economic democracy in principle, but I feel like there should be some kind of hybrid where at least when companies are small, it shouldn't be absolutely required. You should be forced to absolutely treat your workers fairly and like pay them a fair wage and give them benefits and all that stuff. But I feel like for like a small company, at least in the initial stages,
they
shouldn't.
For small companies, but you were talking about a large company earlier. But I agree with you. Yeah,
I think a fishing boat, something like that.
Yeah, it's not a large company, but yeah. I mean, I generally agree with you. Like, you should have some autonomy and control of your own company. But that being said, like you just said, there should be like some mandatory benefits that we are currently not guaranteed in most countries around the world, most capitalist countries around the world, and there are no communist countries in the world, so let's not even go there.
North Korea.
Very communist. Everyone is equal. I mean, obviously, like...
It's not communist at all. They have, like, Chinese factories there producing for
I'm obviously
Nike.
joking. I'm obviously joking. The fact that there's an autocrat dictator that just gets fat all day, eating all the food while, like,
he's
people
lost a
starve
lot of
in the
weight,
street.
Jordan. With your fake news
Our
here.
dear leader, he's so sad. You know who else is another dear leader that's lost a lot of weight? Trump, since he stopped being president. He lost like a lot of weight, actually.
Maybe he's got cancer.
No comment. Just like the passing of Colin Powell, I'm not going to comment on it.
Colin Powell died?
Yeah.
When?
And 3 days ago, maybe?
Of COVID?
Of COVID/blood cancer.
Shoot.
Yeah.
Rest in peace to a man.
Yeah, I have to say it. He played a big hand in lying America into the Iraq War.
I don't know how much he was cognizant of, and I shouldn't use that word. I don't know how much of the lies and the misinformation he was aware of. It's hard for us to say.
He held up a vial of what he claimed was like yellow cake uranium. I've heard people say he didn't believe it, but if someone asked me to do something that I didn't believe in testimony to the UN, I might do some research first. I'm not interested in dancing on graves right now or anything. So suffice to say, I've heard he was a very nice person in person. Interpersonally, he was a very good person. That being said, I can't go without saying that he played an instrumental hand in leading us into a disgusting war that basically accomplished nothing.
Well, you should read Fareed Zakaria's Washington Post column this week, where basically he's saying that Iraq is like the success story of the Middle East right now. They've just had basically another peaceful transition of power. And he argues that despite the fact that voter turnout is quite low, that they've basically elected a new party and a new leader here who, although is still Shia, is not aligned with Iran and basically is not even aligned with America, but is basically focused on removing corruption in Iraq and taking out foreign influences, which is a huge thing.
I don't know how true that is, but I hope it is true. I hope they do make a turnaround, and I hope that
Iraq is a nightmare of Iranian foreign influence right now, so that will be good for everyone. I mean, the country is basically controlled by Iranian militias. I should say the security situation there. So
I hope they do. I don't know. They've had a long, very messed up history, and the U.S. has played and also the Brits have played like a long role in that. So that whole area is.
You really should read that Afghanistan book, because I wasn't aware of. I was just a child when a lot of this was taking place, like the lead up to the Afghanistan war.
Yeah.
And yeah, you kind of look at the situation and you think about their position. And I know I never took the position that I supported the Afghan war, but I've questioned you on why you didn't support it. And reading this, I can understand why an American leader would essentially not have a choice in that situation post 9/11, especially like in the circumstances where they're trying to more or less negotiate. Like, they probably did have better choices, and it wasn't their negotiations with the Taliban did not go as well as possible. But it's really interesting to think about.
Well, my thing is that we had Bin Laden on a silver platter, and
what do you mean?
We denied it. The Afghanistan offered Bin Laden up to us.
Okay,
and Bush denied it.
Just reading this. So yeah, they did not offer them to Bush. They offered to transfer him to a third country to be tried in an Islamic court. That's not offering him up to us on a silver platter. That's offering to remove him from Afghanistan. That's not the same thing.
It's still better than invading
a
country that didn't attack us.
First, okay, they did it. When we say a country that didn't attack us, we didn't invade the country. First of all, we basically helped the Northern Alliance take over the north of the country, and then we helped the Pashtuns take over Kabul. There were 5,000 American troops. There were something like 20,000 Afghan soldiers from the warlords there. We really didn't invade it.
Yeah, but we did. I mean, if Mexico sent 5,000 troops into the U.S., you would call it an invasion.
There were more Arab Al-Qaeda members than there were American troops in Afghanistan at the time.
It doesn't. I don't think that matters. I mean,
it does. How can you call it an invasion when there are foreign troops from multiple countries? So one group of foreign troops is expelling a different group of foreign troops.
Yeah,
which
it's multiple invasions. I mean, that's fine. But like, you can't. If Canada sent in 5,000 troops across the border, you would call it an invasion. If Canada was drone striking Detroit, you would call it like terrorism.
I wouldn't call it an invasion. I would call it, because if you sent Canadian troops into America, yes, that would be an invasion. I agree with you, but that's because the Canadian troops are acting by themselves. It's not the same thing as sending Canadian troops to recon and assist basically an American group in a part of an American civil war, which is essentially what was taking place. Like, that was basically an extension of the Afghan civil war.
I get your point, but okay. I mean, I don't think it was helpful. I don't think that we had any reason to be there, really. Especially with, like, we spent 20 years there, and you can say it's like a small amount of people, but the body count was quite high. And we worked with people that, like the warlords that you mentioned, that had child sex slavery, and American soldiers that pointed it out got discharged because they were trying to point out this corruption inside of the system. And they said, sorry, actually, those are our allies now, so sorry, you're gone. That's disgusting, and I don't think that you can support that. I can't anyway. I can't support child sex slavery.
I think that those are separate issues, though. I think that the rebuilding of Afghanistan and the governance after is separate from us assisting northern warlords take over and then instituting a new constitution. Those are all like separate aspects.
And then, I mean, drone striking weddings and hospitals, and
this is like
funeral processions. it's a lot of different things, but like that's what our impact was essentially in that country. We literally, when we left, we bombed a bunch of children. That was like the last act of America pulling out. So it's just like what good did it do? I don't think it did any good.
If you're taking it in toto sum, yeah, you're probably right. But if you look at the individual pieces, if we're talking like a historical revisionist sense of the individual pieces, was it a mistake in toto? Maybe, probably. But was each individual piece a mistake? I'm not sure, and I don't know if we could have done anything differently, especially considering, back to the original thing, they did not offer him up to us on a silver platter. Basically, we basically told them they offered we will have him tried in an Islamic court, in which he probably would have been acquitted and then just went back to Sudan.
Then you do something, but I mean, at least take the offer, right?
So 5,000 American people are dead, and we say we want to put him on trial, and they say we're going to put him in an Islamic court to be tried for what? I don't even know what.
So instead, we decided we're going to start bombing the shit out of it and kill way more than 5,000 innocent civilians in Afghanistan.
Okay,
is that so? We should go like Hatfields and McCoy with this. Is what it sounds like to me that you're saying.
I'm not saying that.
Okay, that's just how that's how it seems to me. Go ahead.
What we're talking about is whether the Taliban should have been overthrown, not the 15, 20 years of war that took place after that because of different American missteps. Whether we should have gone in the first place.
Yeah, we shouldn't have. There's a lot of governments that are shitty that I think should be overthrown.
It's not about them being shitty. It's not about them being shitty. It's about them hosting a terrorist organization with 20,000 troops that killed 5,000 Americans. So this is more than died at Pearl Harbor, which drove us into World War II with, by the way, the biggest army like in world history.
Well, I would say we basically have a 9/11 every day in the United States because of coronavirus. Should we invade China?
These are tangential issues. We're not talking about public health. We're talking about 5,000 civilians that were killed in a terrorist attack.
But you argue that like China made a choice to basically export coronavirus around the world. That's a biohazard attack. Like it's killing again. Like 9/11 every day.
I agree with that point, but prove it. That's a different thing. We knew that Al Qaeda was responsible. Not only that, the Taliban basically stuck a middle finger in our face. They said, "We don't care. You're the most powerful country in the world. We don't care about the people that died in your country. Go fuck yourselves." And if you're the United States, reeling in your loss, honestly, like Democrats and Republicans alike, there were I think something like 24% who were like, "Yo, let's not invade." Like most people just wanted blood.
It was very little, but yeah, that's horrible. I mean, the attack obviously was horrible. What happened in 9/11 was horrible, but it's also horrible to just want blood revenge, and that's part of the horrible human condition that we've gotten into. It will make us feel better if we just go in and kill the people that did us wrong.
One aspect. It's not necessarily about blood revenge. It's about number one about justice, and number two about preventing future attacks.
What was just about the Afghan war, though?
The initial aspect was removing the Taliban from power and getting rid of Al Qaeda so that they couldn't launch future attacks.
It doesn't feel as good, but the way that we did it clearly didn't work. Like
initially, it did. We basically wiped it. Yeah, we wiped out. We took the Taliban out of power to. We kind of messed it up because they just dispersed abroad.
We messed it up for like 20 fucking years.
The biggest problem was we basically allowed Pakistan to have involvement in this in any way, shape, or form because literally they all just went across the border and hid in Pakistan while we kept pouring money into Pakistan, and then Pakistan just kept pouring money straight back into Al Qaeda and the Taliban.
It's what happens throughout all of U.S. history, basically, essentially since the creation of the OSS. But it doesn't work. Like
in terms of removing the Taliban from power, in terms of doing that specific thing, it was successful. We did remove the Taliban. We instituted a provisional government to put in a new constitution that could have been successful there's a lot of ifs and there's a lot of things we could have done.
It's all counterfactuals. That's the thing is it didn't work. And we've seen throughout U.S. history of this not working.
There are also examples of it working. So I would
say very few and far between.
Okay, like, I mean, if we made a list right now, I think we could come up with an equal amount of examples of situations where it did and didn't work, honestly.
Could we?
I think there are more than it did work, actually.
Really? In what places? I mean, I know you'll say South Korea.
Philippines? Whoa, what's that? The Philippines is a democracy.
Is it?
Taiwan?
Philippines?
The Philippines is a democracy.
Yeah.
Look for their Freedom House rating. It's better than a lot of European democracies.
Okay. So we got, like...
Okay, how many bad cases? You're talking about probably Vietnam.
Are we just talking about... So wait, what is this for just U.S. intervention in general?
Let's just do U.S. military intervention and the outcome in the country.
Guatemala, El Salvador, Chile.
Those are all democracies right now, Jordan. So those are
but
all.
Would not have been democracies without the U.S. intervention? That's the other question. Because when
it's impossible to say, but we're talking about the end result. They're all democracies right now.
Okay, well, I don't know that this is like useful then, because like you look at like Taiwan. I don't think Taiwan is a democracy because of U.S. intervention.
It certainly is. If the U.S. had not intervened, it would be a part of the People's Republic of China right now, where we're sitting.
What I'm saying is, the U.S. offering defensive protection is different than going in and like killing the government, because the U.S. didn't come into Taiwan and say ROC government, which was a terrible government, which the U.S. also worked with before they even came to Taiwan, doing things like allegedly selling heroin, but they protected them. And they said, like, and they tried to influence them via basically foreign policy. That's a lot different than them doing drone strikes in Taiwan. That's my point. I don't mind.
Is the argument about drones specifically? I mean, because
it's about offensive war. It's about violence that the U.S. is meting out in these countries where they clearly cannot do it in a concise way that doesn't just murder civilians without any sort of care in the world. That's my issue. I don't have an issue with the U.S. pushing for its and the ideas of democracy, and even in some cases like its own agenda. Like I don't always like it, but like I can understand that. But like going in and just like bombing shit has never been a good idea. I don't think. Defensive, yes. I'm for self-defense and the defense of your allies. That's okay, but I don't think offensive war is ever okay.
You don't think? Oh wait. You don't think offensive war is ever okay? So what do you mean by that? Using offense to remove a bad regime? So like when the United States declared war in World War II, was that bad?
That was self-defense.
Wasn't. We
were attacked by Japan.
Not Germany.
Yeah, but they're allies. Like it's a war. You don't go, we're fighting Japan, but only Japan, Germany, keep doing what you're doing. Now, that being said, I think that there is something.
Even if Japan hadn't attacked us, we still should have attacked, and that would have been an offensive war. I don't agree with you.
Regardless, we're also in that case supporting what would have been our allies. They had invaded France. Okay, they had basically illegally invaded Belgium. Not basically, they illegally invaded Belgium. Like there was still self-defense there, and I'm not one of these people that says like
we didn't have a military alliance with those states.
It does, well, okay, but like they're still our allies.
In a loose sense of the word.
You don't think the UK was our ally?
The UK was, but the UK wasn't invaded.
France wasn't our ally?
In a loose sense of the word at the time, yeah.
Also, the UK was being bombed. Like it's, that is like a little bit.
Still an offensive war.
It's also a little.
In the same way that Al Qaeda attacks us and we attack them back.
But that's not. I think it's different than like a state.
What do you mean? The Taliban was defending Al Qaeda. That's like.
But it wasn't a state ordered attack. I think there's a difference there.
You're right, but they basically allowed it to happen with impunity.
So would it be okay? Let me ask you this: would it be okay because in America, there are people that have done terrorism in places like Iraq and Afghanistan.
What do you mean?
Look at Blackwater. Like Blackwater mercenaries did a shooting of women and children, basically wantonly just murdering people. Some of them were arrested. There was the other guy that Trump just freed. So there's these people that get arrested, and then a lot of times they get freed and pardoned by people like Trump, who are obviously deplorables. But so then, is it okay for those countries to try to invade us?
If they had the power, I mean, legally.
So it sounds like your argument is might makes right.
That's how the world works. I mean,
So is that morally acceptable?
There's nothing moral about any of this.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I don't support it. I think it's wrong because I don't think it's morally acceptable. That's my argument. Now you can say like, well,
there is no morality in the international space, Jordan. So it's like you can be moral all you want. So let's say
I will.
Okay, so North Korea, let's say they just start being like, we don't really give a shit about anyone else, so we're just gonna start like dumping nuclear waste into the oceans. And
that would be defense. We would be defending ourselves.
But this is the thing. Okay, so let's say it wasn't the North Korean government; it was a terrorist group in North Korea. Now is it okay?
I would say you try to work with the North Koreans first, but
they're like, no, we don't care.
I mean, you're obviously creating like ridiculous situations.
No, this kind of stuff happens all the time. This is exactly.
Well, American corporations also dump insane amounts of chemicals into.
Let's not change the subject.
Okay.
Okay, in that case.
Mm-hmm.
So terrorists are dumping, and the North Koreans like, no, we're not going to deal with it. It's not our problem. It's literally the exact situation in Afghanistan. That's the same situation in Gaza. This happens all the time. The state in control doesn't take responsibility for terrorist organizations who are doing things harming people outside their countries. So we just let it happen.
I don't think the other option is to indiscriminately bomb. Now, I do think there are things that we can do better. Whereas you can do things like, and this is what I've argued for many times in places like Afghanistan, is that you send in a special forces team to go apprehend, like,
so you invade them.
Yeah, I mean, if that's what you have to do, but you don't wantonly bomb them.
So you're in favor of offensive strikes as long as it's not bombing, but that's just a simple tactical tool. So you're not against offensive attacks.
Again, I'm not really in favor of it, but if you're gonna create these like ridiculous,
it's not ridiculous. I just gave you 3 examples where this is real.
Well, I also said that before, like, and you said that Afghanistan wasn't an invasion, so it wouldn't have been an invasion anyway, by your logic. So what I'm saying is, you send a SEAL team in there, like we did in the end, which is how we got them anyway, which wasn't even in Afghanistan.
Hang on. I said Afghanistan wasn't an invasion because the majority of the forces were Afghan, not American. That's why. You're talking about sending in a SEAL team in.
Yeah, that's even less people than we sent in.
Less people, but it's only Americans. That is definitely an invasion. By definition.
But if we could send other people in there too to protect them or close down borders or whatever you want to do, like if the big deal is that it's like we have more than just Americans, that's fine, whatever. That's fine, yeah.
Okay.
But I don't. The other thing is, when we're talking about Afghanistan and 9/11, there's pretty good evidence that we kind of knew that attack was happening. I'm not trying to get super down the conspiracy hole, but like there's pretty good evidence that Bush knew that there was some sort of imminent attack. Anyway, I don't think that it was like an inside job or anything. I'm not trying to get like crazy about it, but
as a principle, so it's okay. Offensive attacks.
I'm not saying it's necessarily okay. It's like you said, it's a fucking moral gray area. But I think that if we're talking about on the scale of good versus bad, yeah, it's much better to send in a group of 6-7 guys that infiltrate in and say like, yeah, they go and find the guy and assassinate the fucking head.
Your main issue is with the tactical differences, not with.
My main issue is with bloodshed of innocence. I want to minimize that as much as possible.
Even though Al Qaeda struck 5,000 innocent people.
5,000 innocent people. How many did we kill in Afghanistan?
How many did we kill in Afghanistan?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
A lot more than 5,000.
I don't know.
A lot more than 5,000. I've seen estimates upwards of 50,000 innocent civilians.
Made by who? I think that lots of civilians died, but most of them were killed by
Afghans. You can do this all the. I know that this is a common tactic that people like to use is go, well, we don't know, and I agree with you. It's hard to give exact numbers. I can almost guarantee you, we killed more than 5,000 innocent civilians.
That may be true, and I agree with you. That's wrong. But
yeah, it's wrong. So,
but I would say that's a separate offshoot and a factor of the fact that we were there for 20 years instead of immediately pulling out and letting their transitional government do their thing.
But this is the other problem with these wars. Once we get a foothold in these countries, it is very hard to leave because people are making so much money off of it.
You should read that book because in the initial period we had only 5,000 troops there.
But again, it doesn't. 5,000 is enough to make a shitload of money for these weapons contractors.
Yeah.
So that's my argument. And when people like literally, I mean, this is Iraq, not necessarily. It's also Afghanistan, kind of. But anyway, when you have people like Dick Cheney literally directly profiting off of it by being like having a huge stake in Halliburton.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's problematic.
Like what the? It's not problematic. It's fucking evil, man.
We need to get money out of politics, obviously. Anybody.
Yeah, totally. That's. I mean, it always goes back to like that's kind of the primary issue.
My issue is just pointing to these like failures and being like America can't do anything right, and that's why we shouldn't use the American military offensively anymore. I disagree with in general because I've heard that with Taiwan too. They're like, oh, look what they did in Afghanistan. Taiwan's next. Like I hear that a lot, man.
Well, I don't think that would again. That's not using it offensively. That's defensively for an ally. I mean, Taiwan is an ally of the United States.
Taiwan is not a country for like half of the American people. Like
I don't think half the American people know what the fuck Taiwan is.
It's probably true.
So, but Taiwan is a de facto ally. Like again, you're
de facto.
I
agree.
You're
with
defending
you.
And also not only allies. Okay, I should also make this more clear. I think that defending innocence, just like you talked about, like Germany. I think that there's something to be said even about like defending like Jews and the Roma people and all these people that were killed in the Holocaust. Like that's also something where I think that like you can't stand by and idly watch it. I don't know.
Okay, I agree with you.
I don't know that it always entails an invasion because it depends on the situation, but it certainly requires swift and decisive fucking action. Just like what's happening in China right now. Every country that claims to love democracy and freedom and human rights should immediately cut off ties with China.
Agreed. By the way, I saw a statistic recently. They said that China's been involved in more border disputes than any other country in the world in the last 50 years.
It doesn't surprise me at all. I mean,
kind of surprises me because you think about how many countries there are in the world and like how many borders were redrawn, like Russia and the Soviet Union. But China's number one.
Well, think about how massive. Yeah, that's true. With the Soviet Union, that's like a little bit interesting. But I wonder if they consider the Soviet Union and then Russia the same. But
I don't know.
Even Russia itself is like, yeah, it's a lot. But I mean, you think about how I guess Russia's border is massive as well. But like China's
border is very
huge.
Long and it's like very curved.
Yeah,
so it's got a long surface area there.
Well, and then you also have things like. I don't know. Again, I didn't see this, but I wonder also if they consider things like the 9-dash line and like the.
No. I don't. I think it's just talking. I don't know. I can check the article if you're interested.
Yeah, I would be interested because I wonder if it contains like
that's not the main point of the article.
Disputes with like the Philippines and stuff too.
Probably does, but I don't know because technically those are like land borders.
We also have them building fucking like
shoals and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of nonsense. Oh,
I think we broadly agree on this. We just like to nitpick.
No, of course. I mean, I think that's important because we need to get down into like the rough details of stuff, and it's not always going to be clear. Like, there's a lot of ambiguity in these things, but I think it's important to like try to suss out exactly what you believe, like, and where we would draw these lines, because I think it's important to be ingenuous. Which I think is a word that we've created on this podcast before. But I think it's important to be serious about these things as opposed to just saying like US bad or China bad or like whatever bad. It's like, no, why? Like what actions are they taking that are good or bad? And like, can we actually measure these things and talk about them? I wanted to do that. That's why I said, oh man, because I remembered I wanted to do that quiz, but it's kind of late now. The Washington Post quiz.
Let's do it now and then end this.
Do you want to do it as like a separate thing?
How long will it take?
I don't know how long it'll take.
Like 20 minutes or like an hour?
It shouldn't take an hour.
Fine, let's just do it now and then it'll just be the end.
All right, throw it up on the. This is a good way to end on a positive note. Throw it up on the projector. The quiz is called.
Just send me the link.
Okay. It's a WAPO thing, so.
I like your dirty language. Looks like Donald Trump has a new social media app.
You didn't hear about that?
I did not. You gonna download it?
I'm thinking about it, but I gotta download like a burner phone because I think he already lost. What was it? It was something. Oh, one of the things I saw. it was recent that they said that they won't allow like excessive use of capital letters, which is hilarious for Trump. But I feel like it's gonna be the same thing with what was it, Bumble? That's not Bumble, but whatever it's called, the other conservative thing that like fell apart because they're gonna like leak people's social security numbers or something. Like it's gonna be ridiculous.
I just won't put any personal data on there, but I'm gonna try it.
All right.
We'll just message each other on Trump's app.
Make another. It's definitely not encrypted.
It'll be 100% encrypted. Encrypted from the liberal deep state.
They probably have like a backdoor built in for like Google
China.
and the Pentagon. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so number one, let's get started. Which of the statements below is
true? So first of all, for everyone, we're doing this is a Washington Post poll about conspiracies and it's how susceptible basically you are to conspiracy theories. So here's the first one. Go ahead, Ari. You have to determine which one is true.
I mean, so in each of these, one of them is actually true. It's been verified.
Well, that's what they're saying.
Okay.
This is all Washington Post opinion, from what I would say.
Jeffrey Epstein, billionaire accused of running an elite sex trafficking ring, was murdered to cover up the activity of this criminal. Definitely true. F. Kennedy was killed by a conspiracy rather than a lone gunman. The FBI kept tabs on Martin Luther King to find compromising information. Regardless of who is officially in charge of the government and other organizations, there's a single group of people who secretly control events and rule the world together.
The problem with this one is that they're all true. And I'll tell you why. Epstein is not verifiably true, but is very likely true. I mean, the fact
that here is verifiably that we know it's true, because otherwise it's a conspiracy.
We don't know that any of them is necessarily true.
The third one we do because there are files.
Well, the third one is definitely true because because the FBI literally COINTELPRO contacted him and told him to kill himself.
That's the point of this, though, is to see if you know what has been actually verified as true and what you just believe might be
idiotic, though, because it's trying
you wanted to take this quiz,
I know, because I wanted to take it because it's stupid. Because it's this stupid fucking quiz. It's definitely, obviously, that the Martin Luther King one. Epstein also didn't kill himself. Let me just make that clear. You don't break your hyoid when you kill yourself in a place where you shouldn't be killed. Not to mention the fact that he was one of the most high-valued targets for the U.S. intelligence, and they just like let people quote unquote fall asleep on the job. Maybe and the camera happened and did not be working. Anyway,
prove it.
It's not my job. That's the U.S. government's job.
It's the Washington Post's job.
But the U.S. government did it.
Partisanship plays a role in what people believe. Both Republicans and Democrats are prone to believe conspiracy theories make the other party look bad. Will you be blinded by party loyalty? So the first one, Republicans cheated their way to win the 2000, 2004, and 2016 presidential election.
See, that's ridiculous because they did for the 2000 election and maybe the 2004, but the 2016 I don't think so.
2000 you could argue it. 2004.
2004 is much more difficult to prove. But 2000 I think is pretty arguable with like all the hanging Chad nonsense, not to mention the fact that they had like these chuds come out and like basically protest and stop the counting of the election, and a quote unquote like the most democratic country in the world like stop the election, and then you had the Supreme Court vote to stop the counting. Like that seems like a stolen election to me.
Anyway, let's talk about three. The second one, Hillary Clinton conspired to provide Russia with nuclear material.
Hell yeah.
Number three, Ronald Reagan's presidency, government officials met secretly and illegally sold weapons to Iran and used the money to fund the Nicaraguan revolutionaries. And Obama faked his citizenship to become president.
First of all, this third one, what do you think they mean by Nicaraguan revolutionaries?
The Contras.
Yeah, the Contras are not revolutionaries.
Didn't they want to overthrow the government?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like
not
that
revolutionary. Seems
like a pretty interesting way to frame the argument. But anyway, obviously the third one is true here too.
The fourth one, that's what you meant, right? Still, a lot of people believe the Obama thing. Clinton gave nuclear materials to Russia 28%.
That's ridiculous.
Okay. Blah, 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 blah. Health and science. The dangers of genetically modified foods are being hidden from the public. That's arguable, I mean, but it's not provable, right? Because it's like an idea that there's what do you call it? A conspiracy, I guess.
I mean, the full evidence is not being given. It depends if you can consider that hiding it or not. I mean,
you see the full evidence. I think there's limited evidence, but the evidence is just kind of... I don't think it's covered up, but it's not talked about.
Well, the FDA also just doesn't investigate a lot of stuff. Like we were talking about supplements and stuff. Like Alex Jones full of vital male enhancement.
But that's not genetically modified foods.
Oh yeah, I didn't see it was GMOs. Yeah, for GMOs, I would say it's. I don't. Yeah, to prove that it's hidden is a little bit more of a stretch, but I would say it's.
Prove it.
I would say they certainly don't investigate enough and probably don't release all the stuff they have because they have a vested interest in making money off of it.
Number 2, the U.S. government secretly dosed Americans with LSD to develop mind control technology. Number 3, the AIDS virus was created and spread around the world on purpose by a secret organization. And number 4, the coronavirus was purposely created and released by powerful people as part of a conspiracy. Obviously, the fourth one.
It's definitely 2, but obviously 4 is also possible.
Prove it.
That one I would argue less for than like some of the other ones, but that one's
possible to prove. I mean,
that's the thing is like a lot of these are impossible to prove.
I like how this is a conspiracy. GMOs are secretly dangerous. I mean, they are dangerous like when they get into the wild and then eradicate native populations of other animals.
Well, it depends what GMO you're talking about anyway, because like all the bananas that Americans eat are GMOs.
The AstraZeneca virus is a GMO.
The AstraZeneca virus. Was that a Freudian slip from you?
What did it?
You said AstraZeneca virus.
It is a virus. The AstraZeneca vaccine. It was a Freudian slip. The AstraZeneca vaccine is a genetically modified chimpanzee virus. When we use the word organism, a lot of people wouldn't say that viruses are not living organisms.
Right.
That they're kind of like non-living parasites. But anyways, they're genetically modified entities, let's say that.
Okay. GMEs.
School shootings such as those in Newton, Connecticut, and Parkland, Florida are false flag attacks.
By the way, Alex Jones just lost 2 cases in regards to the Parkland shooting case.
I thought he apologized for that. He apologized on Rogan for that.
He has apologized a lot of times, but like he still seems to fight these cases because he's afraid of losing face, but also like you said, he like kind of admits it sometimes. And he admitted in there was hearings like with his family where he like admitted it was like all a joke.
Well, I don't think that was about the Parkland. That was just
no, it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, you're right.
The number of Jews killed by the Nazis during World War II has been exaggerated on purpose, and satanic sex traffickers control the government. And the fourth one is
hell yeah.
Above. Obviously, these are all crazy.
It's obviously none of the above, but I mean that number 3,
Pizzagate.
Satanic. I don't think so, but sex perverts, sex traffickers, child rapists. I mean, Epstein was like he was. And
Epstein
he was
did not control the government.
Yeah, I control. Probably not, but influential, definitely. I mean, Bill Gates was his best buddy.
Bill Gates doesn't control the government either.
He wasn't his best buddy. He did control education policy for like the past decade in the United States, though.
Jeffrey Epstein controlled education.
No. I'm talking about Bill Gates, who was possibly controlled by Epstein because he went and hung out with Epstein. Epstein might have got some videos of him getting, I'm using scare quotes here, shoulder rubs from underage girls. That's all I'm saying.
No comment.
That's all I'm saying.
The U.S. government knew hundreds of black men in Alabama had syphilis, but told them they had bad blood and withheld treatment as part of a medical experiment. Donald Trump faked having COVID-19 in order to help his chances at re-election. And Donald Trump colluded with Russians to steal the presidency in 2016. Obviously.
It's obviously number 1 because it's the Tuskegee Institute.
Yeah. And last one. A powerful family, the Rothschilds, through their wealth controls governments, wars, and many countries' economies. There is a deep state embedded in the government that operates in secret and without oversight. Fossil fuel companies like Exxon knew about climate change for decades, but spread misinformation about the issue to deflect blame and influence environmental policies. That sounds true.
Well, okay, here's the thing. Number 1 is if you get rid of the word Rothschilds and you say like rich capitalist families like the Rothschilds, that's true. That's true. Like like you look at these companies.
You're talking about
like
one powerful family.
I know. Talking about one powerful family is wrong. But if you talk about the powerful families in the United States, that's true. Like it just is. We've done it. Like you look at like banana republics. You look at Facebook in Myanmar and a number of other countries. Like they do. That's just true. Number 2, deep state embedded in the government. There's a deep state. Like there is. Like the CIA. Like are you fucking kidding me? Like yes.
There's a bureaucracy, but I think there's a distinction that should be between like an embedded bureaucracy and a deep state, where like it acts without oversight.
The CIA acts without oversight, my friend.
They're under the oversight of Congress legally.
Legally, but have they ever been punished for anything they've done that they've literally admitted?
I'm not sure.
All these operations that they did, the things that they admitted earlier that happened,
those things definitely not. Now I think some of them have, but I don't know.
I don't think so. I would have to see any sort of evidence, which I've never seen evidence of the CIA being held accountable, nor the FBI for that matter, when we're talking about things like COINTELPRO and like murder, arguably like the legitimate just out and out murder of MLK, but also, I mean, there are numerous civil rights leaders that were basically murdered by the FBI.
Yeah, but I don't think there's any. Well, is there proof that MLK was murdered by any government official?
There's evidence to show that they had a big hand in it. There's also stuff like Sirhan. You also have things like Fred Hampton's murder,
These
where
are
the
all
FBI.
Suspicious things, but the thing is, if without proof, it's hard to.
The issue is that the people that would be tasked to investigate this are also the people accused of doing the fucking crime. So it's like you can say like, well, they can't prove it, and it's like, well, they also don't have a vested interest to actually investigate.
I mean, that's why they have like congressional committees that investigate this. People who have the ability to conduct that oversight.
Yeah, people that could also be similarly murdered by the fucking people that are alleged to do this. I'm not saying that it's necessarily true, but I'm saying like
the congressional
if it is
committees
true,
are usually Congress people.
Agreed, but like again, if JFK was murdered by the FBI or the CIA,
that one I don't believe.
I'm not saying I believe it. I'm saying I think that not the FBI, but the CIA having a hand in Kennedy's assassination, I think that it's possible. I think that the story that they have currently, and this is I'm not a lone gunman here. It's something like over 50% of the United States doesn't believe in the lone gunman theory.
Yeah, they had that above. That doesn't mean anything. I mean, like half of Americans voted for Donald Trump in the last election. So
less than half.
95% of Americans voted for either Donald Trump or Joe Biden, and for that alone,
not 95. There was like 50 something percent turnout.
95% of Americans who bothered to get up off their asses and voted for Joe Biden or Donald Trump.
Yeah, I mean they didn't have any. They
didn't
have any other choices.
I don't really care.
And the people that stayed home, well,
what they believe doesn't reflect reality.
So did you, though.
I mean, I didn't vote.
So you're part of the lazy class that stayed home.
I mean, I vote. I don't want to get into the technicalities here. Point being, it doesn't matter what Americans believe. That doesn't make it true.
No, absolutely not. That's not true. I'm just saying that, like, it's sus, is all I'm saying.
Just because Americans believe it?
No, because there's no clear story about what happened, and there's no clear, obvious evidence that, like, the story from the government is the right one.
There's a lot of weird shit, but I think that the precedent that would be created by an intelligence organization in the United States offing the leader of the United States would basically, I mean, people who work for intelligence agencies, I assume most of them, a lot of the people, whoever would order something like that are there because they have a very deep interest in promoting the interests of the United States by creating an intelligence organization, by creating a precedent where an intelligence organization within the United States could usurp American democratic power and murder the leader of the country. They're essentially spitting on the face of every American citizen and burning the Constitution in one fell swoop. That's the most anti-American thing you can do. So I don't see how somebody who would get in that high of a position could conceptually justify doing something to themselves. I have a hard time believing that.
They do anti-democratic stuff all over the world all the time.
In other countries, not ripping apart American democracy. They've done horrible shit, but the symbolic nature of killing the American president, it seems like a step too far. It's possible.
I don't know why. I don't know why it would be. I get your sentiment, but I'm just saying I don't.
To create a massive conspiracy.
It wouldn't have to be a massive
conspiracy.
It would. Because it wouldn't. Here's the thing. Because they've done. This is the FBI, not the CIA, which is the thing that people argue was the one that killed Kennedy.
What, FBI?
But anyway, no, they would argue that the CIA did it. But the FBI internally has done a number of things where they've gotten terrorists, some of them right wing, some of them like Muslim extremists, up to the point of doing terrorist plots. That doesn't take a big team, man. It takes a couple people.
That's not the same thing as murdering the president of the United States, covering up the autopsy, covering up every person involved, covering up the investigation, murdering the murderer, and then covering up the investigation of that murder, covering up all the witnesses, covering up all the investigation, including from multiple law enforcement.
Why do you have to cover up all that though? If you just get some crazy person, you dose them with LSD, like we've proven that they've done before in MK Ultra, like. You just get them to kill the guy, and then you say like, "Whoa, he's just a crazy guy." I don't even know that it's not even. You could even argue that like if
it's not
someone wanted to kill Oswald, they would just kill him. Like you have like
there's a logistics thing. You can't just have a crazy person kill the president of the United States. If you make them crazy, they are probably not capable of doing. It's difficult to kill the president. Let's be honest. You'd have to.
It was much less difficult at that time.
You'd have to have a team of logistical people getting them the weapons, getting them in place, making sure
Here's
they're in the right place at the right time.
The official argument is that it was just some crazy guy. So how is that any different than
the same thing? I mean, the same thing there. If he was crazy, because I don't think he was crazy in the sense that you're talking about, somebody that just doped up on LSD. If somebody was psychotic and influenced on LSD, I feel like they would have a hard time putting together, because they'd be in a near schizophrenic state. They'd have a hard time organizing it without a team. And once you have that team, you lose the ability to hold that secret.
My argument is not that he was on LSD at the time. It's that they might have used some sort of mind-altering substance to influence him. Now, he might have also just wanted to kill the president anyway. In that case, you just basically need one person to influence him and say, hey, here's, the big book depository. You could climb up there. You could shoot the president right here. Here's a gun. I'll give it to you. I'll help you buy it. Whatever it is. Or here's some money.
So why does it need to be the CIA? Literally any person in America could do that.
I'm not saying it
could have been his brother.
I'm not saying it necessarily has to be, but Kennedy was very hostile to the CIA, and it seems like there's...
I would say half the presidents in American history have been hostile towards the CIA.
I wouldn't say half, because they haven't been around for half of the presidents. Now, if you say half of them since...
Half the presidents since 1950.
Since the creation of the CIA, I wouldn't even argue that. Who? Besides Kennedy?
Let's see. Obama had a very tense relationship with them. Trump had a very tense relationship with them. This is just over the last 20 years.
I don't think Obama did at all.
Donald Trump certainly did. I mean, like, from what I understand, I mean, those organizations went through turmoil. He consistently undermined them. And the intelligence community, for one thing, does not like to be undermined. Every time they provide him with intelligence, he just overruled it and did whatever the fuck he wanted anyways. He took the work of probably like 10,000 people who worked for the Pentagon and Defense Department, CIA, and he just threw everything they did in the trash for 4 years. So I don't think they were big fans of his.
Anyway, that's not big fans of his, but like talking about dismantling the CIA, I think is a fundamentally different thing. Yeah, I mean we're obviously gonna argue in circles forever, so we should just probably stop. But what I'm saying is, yeah, because there's no provability here.
I don't believe that. I think it's too much of a jump.
No, I think we have to answer the question. Is what I meant. I mean, I think that's fair. I don't disrespect you. It's definitely number 3.
Is it?
Exxon knew about climate change.
Okay, we got it. Final score. You aced the quiz. Blah 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 blah. Yeah, we both know, like, I mean, this is kind of very poppy, right? These are just like the pop conspiracy theories that I shouldn't say most.
It's poppy, but we're in the top 10%. It says 9 and 10 would fail this.
That's pretty sad. Well, a lot of people don't read.
Well, I think what it is also like there are a lot of believable quote unquote conspiracy theories, and until the evidence is released, then they're considered conspiracy theories.
This also, I mean, illustrates some of the distrust in government in general.
Yeah, absolutely.
The government could do something to help that. I agree with what you said. That these organizations should make sure that they're accountable, because that's one of the aspects of having a healthy democracy.
So I hope that there's more information released. I don't know how hopeful I am about that, but we can always wish upon a star, bud.
You do every night.
All right, you all should wish upon a star too. We're wishing upon a star that you'll go to our Patreon, patreon.com/FreeChinaPost. And if you can't do that, you can always go to our website.
Yeah, it's better if you share it right now.
You can share. Yeah,
We're not in a drought anymore.
You should always be sharing everything, and then you can go to our website as well. Read the articles, of course, but also disable your ad blocker. And if you see any interesting ads, go ahead and click on those little bad boys and girls. That'll help us out a lot. And yeah, things like giving us ratings on iTunes, whatever, and then obviously word of mouth, sharing with your friends. We appreciate all that. But yeah, we love you. We'll talk to y'all soon. Don't you forget. FCP right now.